Welcome to the Ancestral Kitchen Podcast with Alison, a European town dweller in central Italy, and Andrea, living on a newly created family farm in Northwest Washington State, USA. Pull up a chair at the table and join us as we talk about eating, cooking, and living with ancient ancestral food wisdom in a modern world kitchen. Hello, Alison. How are you?
Yeah. I'm recovering from a germ, but doing well and looking forward to talking about festivities today because I feel like it will get me in the mood for the new season, which is nice. How are you?
I'm good. I'm definitely in the mood. And I'll just preamble this by saying that right before we started recording, the baby came downstairs. Well, she's 3, but, she's my baby. And so she's snuggled up in lots of fuzzy blankets on the couch next to me. So if anybody hears a little sound, that might be her.
Hey. And have you eaten yet this morning?
No. Funny because, well, it doesn't, listeners won't know, but you and I moved our recording day this week. And so I got off of my normal schedule or whatever you want to say. I should tell you the last thing I ate last night, which is, I don't know if it falls into the category of ancestral or not, but it sure falls in the category of good, which is when we went to do our milk pickup, then Katie had made us a pan of cinnamon rolls. Oh my word, they're so good. So we had those last night.
I've seen those, those aren't really a thing in the UK. Well, not that I know of anyway, but
really?
I know they're a big thing from what I've heard of in the US, and they always look so good when I see pictures of them. Really nice.
I don't know where they came from. I actually have no idea what the origin on cinnamon rolls is. It's kind of funny. I feel like usually I have some sort of, I remember hearing about it in some Middle Ages thing, but I have no idea where cinnamon rolls came from.
I might have to just research that and see, I think.
I have a feeling you ate lunch, though, so I hope you ate lunch. It's pretty late for you, so.
I did.
What did you have?
I think we could spend a whole episode talking about my lunch. We're not going to.
What? Wait, what?
We had lentils, some red lentils, which I cooked in some stock, which I wasn't sure what the bones were when I got them out of the freezer to put them in the slow cooker last night. But turns out they were duck bones. And there were lots of bones and not much water compared to the amount of bones. So it was a really rich stock. And then I put the stock in to cook the lentils in, which had been soaking overnight. And oh my gosh, they were amazing. Just putting stock in lentils rather than water does something to elevate them to a wonderful heights.
I agree. Oh my goodness.
We had those, and I had mine on some spelt bread that I raised using only milk kefir. Something that I haven't yet done this year. I made loads of them like last year and the year before, where I make a starter out of half spelt flour and half milk kefir, and I let it rise, and that becomes, instead of a sourdough starter, I use that to rise my bread. So it has, because it's much more lactic acid dominant rather than a mix of lactic and acetic acid like my sourdough starter is, the bread is so creamy and soft flavour, which allows the flavour of the spelt to come through more. It's got a tiny bit of honey in it. So I had 2 slices of that I toasted, put my lentils on the top with loads and loads of olive oil, had some cabbage, which we got from the local market on Thursday, and then we had beer. We had a bit of beer with it. Rob has more than me, but I've changed my beer recipe slightly in that up until now I've been following Sandor Katz's boza recipe from Wild Fermentation, and that basically asks for a sourdough starter to make the yeast and bacteria that make the beer, which results in a really quite sour beer, and it's nice, but it's on the sour side. And the kind of learning I've done about farmhouse beers and yeasts and bacteria is I was keen to try and make a starter that was much more yeast dominant rather than bacteria dominant, so it would have less of that sour flavour. And I noticed over the last couple of months that the boza that I make, which sounds like boozer, but it's not, the Turkish fermented millet drink, has been getting more and more alcoholic. And I kind of didn't, I was like, what's going on here? And I realised that the starter's just getting stronger and stronger that I use for it, because I've been making it a year. So it's getting more and more yeasts in it, because it's a starter that eats sugar. And it was originally, I make it as that. And so it's been getting more and more of a yeast culture in there, which is producing more and more alcohol. And I thought, well, why don't I just use some of that to start my beer? Because this is really yeast dominant. So I put that in the last lot of beer that we got, and it's produced a completely different flavour drink.
Wow.
Even though it's the same grains and the same sort of process
amazing.
of technique with baking little loaves and sprouting the rye myself. But it's got just no sour to it at all. And it's just, it's really beautiful, really smooth. And I flavoured the bottles with some different flavourings. This one that I had today is flavoured with chocolate barley malt, so it's got a kind of a smoky, chocolatey flavour to it. And so I had a tiny a small half glass of that with my lentils and my bread and my cabbage. It was delicious.
That is amazing. Okay, was it like a shredded cabbage real quick?
Yeah, it was quite a light green shredded cabbage. Cabbages are just everywhere here now because the vegetables have turned to winter vegetables. And
yes, I love cabbage.
So there's a really wide range of darker green leaves, Savoy cabbages, light cabbages, Chinese cabbages, and I love cabbage. So just some of that I shredded and boiled on the side, and olive oil all over it. The new olive oil season has kicked in. The farm up the hill where we get our raw goat's milk from, I saw on Instagram they posted that their new oil's here. So looking forward to getting some new oil. But yeah, olive oil all over it was beautiful. Yeah, autumn's really good.
Goodness.
Autumn and winter, the beginning of winter and autumn.
Man.
Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing about the boza though. I'm thinking of how funny it would be if you weren't paying attention and you got on here like 2 years after you started and you're like, we really love making boza. It's so good. Like just getting more and more alcohol as you go. That's a great point though. I guess I hadn't really thought about that. The starter is going to get stronger. I think that
I was completely surprised because usually I make it for Gabriel. But sometimes when I dish it out for him, I lick the spoon. I don't do it very often because it's a sweet ferment, and I tend to, as you know, I measure my ferments. But I tasted it, I was like, whoa, that's got some alcohol in it. What's happened there? And then it's just the fact that this culture's been growing and growing, and more yeast have been finding a home in it. And I've built something that's really quite powerful, which I thought I'll just try it in the beer. Why not?
Yeah. Why not? Oh, that's awesome. And it's another lesson learned. So is that something you would go back and add like an addendum to your course? Like, a year in, here's an idea type thing?
I think I probably will add something to it because if people are making it regularly, it's going to get more and more alcoholic. And I want to try and play around with it to see if I shorten the ferment time, perhaps that's not going to be an issue. Or if I put less starter in, half the amount of starter, maybe that won't be an issue. I don't think it's something that I think it's something I can solve probably with just a few little experiments here and there.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, what's interesting is there's so much stuff that people can give a recipe for making sauerkraut or whatever, but there's this sort of slightly different level of knowledge and things that comes with doing it every week for years or something. You know what I mean? Like there's something a little different, like just this little tiny little tweak that you're adjusting here. If you saw, Turkish grandma making boza back in the day and you saw her doing, whatever it is you're going to adjust, you might be like, well, no, why is she doing that? She doesn't really need to do that. But not realizing, oh, well, year over year, this thing might change, Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's fascinating. These things are alive, They're alive. And they're growing, and they've got their whole own agenda going on. To my agenda, which is I don't want boza for Gabriel to be too alcoholic. They've got their own
but
ideas.
they're going to reproduce as fast and as many and as much as they can, and and that's their business. So interesting. Now, I also I just pulled up what's the history of cinnamon rolls, and of course, I guess I did know this. I did know this now that I saw it. It's Swedish, so it was almost definitely something brought over, across Ellis Island by immigrants, which is why you see it popular, most especially like in New England and the Midwest out here. It's like a really big deal. So there's a lot of, it's really interesting looking at food patterns in the United States because we are very largely shaped by African cuisine. Like when you think of a lot of traditional American quote unquote foods, they're actually very heavily influenced by African cuisine, because that is who Americans were literally kidnapping, and enslaving people from Africa and bringing them over here. And what were they doing? They were bringing over their gardening traditions and their cooking traditions, and they were being forced to cook for people. And sometimes they weren't allowed to make things in their traditional ways, but a lot of times people would actually be valued based on the region they came from, because, oh, look, they have this really great knowledge on growing sweet potatoes, or they have this, like a really experienced cook or something, would be literally bought and sold for more money.
Yeah,
I mean, just
worth
horrible,
their weight in
horrible
gold.
things. Yeah, I mean, awful things. Well, you know all about our horrible history with that. But all that to say that they largely shaped a lot of what we think of traditional American foods over here. Think of like barbecue and cornbread and stuff like that. These are things that, so then we also have a lot of Native American impact on our food, things that were here whenever settlers arrived that they stole or adapted or whatever. And then ever since America's been founded, people have been coming here from all over the world. And so, but then they would tend to go to like, oh, there's like a German section over here, right? So lots of German people would go to one particular kind of region and farm. So out here where I live, there's tons and tons of Swedish history. So like if you go out to the old graveyards out here, then all the old graves are like, Larson and, Olofsson and all of these Swedish farmers. So we have a huge impact from that ripple effect out here. So anyways, so cinnamon buns or cinnamon rolls or sticky buns, they're called different names. That's where they came from, mostly from Sweden.
It might be that I just completely missed the cinnamon bun thing in the UK. But I think, I'm trying to think of an equivalent in the UK. I mean, there's the Chelsea bun, which has got white icing and a random glacé cherry on the top. But I think perhaps a patisserie culture in the UK has been influenced a lot by France, in that, croissant is always the thing that was at the top of my list of must-haves as a kid if I was to go somewhere like that, or pain au chocolat with the chocolate down the middle. And I remember going on holiday to France as a young kid and experiencing both of those kind of made by proper French bakers. And but yeah, cinnamon rolls are just, and I've never even tried making them for Gabriel. That's the sort of thing that he would love to do, to roll it up and to put the cinnamon in it.
Well, they're really good when they're sourdough, and they don't have to be sweet. They're not, I mean, of course, American culture is to make everything like insanely sweet, which is actually another tradition that was influenced by African cuisine, because you would be more, it's interesting that something like sweet potatoes that people eat actually helps to prevent like malaria. But there are foods that people eat that improve their body's resistance to things that were traditional. And when you take them out of that region, the impact it has on people, just culturally, but also physically. But again, so they brought some sweet traditions over And of course that influenced our cooking. I don't know how much of that also is just influenced by the corn syrup industry trying to sell more product.
Yeah, probably. That's mixed into it, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, but you can take a good thing and then run with it in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh Lord, I think it'd be really interesting to carry on our discussion now, because we're going to talk about Christmas and festive and winter traditions, and so we're kind of heading in that way anyway. First of all, I want to say thank you to the wonderful patrons who are supporting us every month in what we do, and how hopefully by the time this episode goes out we have done our kind of winter cook up and chat with them on Zoom, which should be hopefully on the feed for them to listen to again or watch again. And it feels really wonderful to have gone through this year and to have picked up some very generous, wonderful people who are willing to say, I like what you're doing and I want to help you carry on. So thank you very much, patrons. We're very, very grateful for you. So
grateful. Yes, it still boggles my mind. We set up the Patreon thing and then people joined. Like, what?
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God. So it's really exciting and really
they're lovely people.
The fire.
Cool. It's really cool to talk to them, which is nice.
Yes, it is.
So let's move on to our topic, which
I'm ready.
I kind of was going to call Christmas food, but then also festive foods, because not everyone celebrates Christmas. But also then I thought winter, but then of course it's not winter for everyone. So maybe just festive foods and festive traditions is the right title. First of all, I think probably there's some differences between standard Christmases or Christmases that you know of and what you associate with Christmas over in the US and what I associate with Christmas in the UK. So I wondered if you could give us, to start with, just a random, flow of what you associate with Christmas and what traditions and foods are usual for the States.
Okay. And I know that a lot of American traditions came from the UK, so thank you. So for us, Christmas also, it depends on if it falls on a Sunday or not. I guess I should include Christmas Eve in this conversation, shouldn't I? Because Christmas Eve can be a big deal. So we don't open our presents on Christmas Eve in our family. Like, we do gifts on Christmas. I know not everybody does gifts, but we choose to. And Christmas Eve can be a mixture of, sometimes it gets pulled off well, and sometimes it's just chaos. Depends on how prepared we are. Maybe I'm just still getting ready for Christmas Day, or maybe we have like a family dinner or something. I don't have any real hard and fast Christmas Eve traditions, although I would like to put some more in place. I remember growing up, my mom always had cookies in front of the Christmas tree last thing before we went to bed. So that was kind of a fun deal.
Nice.
And then on Christmas Day, Christmas Eve night, it's my role to go out and put the presents underneath the tree.
So your tree's outside?
No, we put it in the living room or whatever.
Okay.
Main living space.
Yeah.
And then the kids, wake up as early as they can.
Yeah.
And come and tell us oh my goodness, there's all this stuff under the tree. And my mom was hugely influential on a lot of the traditions and things that I do. And my mom is just really, really powerful at putting magic into everything. And I really work hard to bring that over for my kids.
That's beautiful.
Because the absolute just wonder and my growing up with 8 kids in the family, there's modest means, right? Because you've got so many kids to divide everything between. But my mom always made Christmas just seem absolutely over the top, because that was when we got our new clothes. That was when we got our school books.
Okay.
That was when we got all of our practical things for the year come at Christmas. And I just think that's brilliant, because some people say, oh, I don't want to give too many things, because there's only so many toys a kid needs. And I always was confused by that, because I was like, I mean, you get like a toy on Christmas, but most of your stuff is other things.
See. Okay.
Now I realize my mom was just making the ordinary very, very magical. And so when you open, a beautiful package with, underwear and socks, so we would just be freaking out. Thanks, Mom. This is so awesome. I'm so excited. So we do that too, because it just makes Christmas, it makes it last longer. It makes it feel more exciting. It makes it feel more abundant, because you're opening literally ordinary things. She would also give us like packages of snacks and things that, like, you can get dried fruit and all this kind of fun stuff that you don't normally get. And she would get boxes of oranges and just things that felt like just crazy exciting, because it came in the form of a gift.
Do you do stockings in the US? Hanging up a stocking?
We do.
Yeah,
we do.
Okay. And did you do that as a family? Do you still?
Yeah. My mom is really good at stuffing stockings. She's kind of famous for it. So she would make all of us stockings, and then whenever one of us girls was dating a guy at the time, and we all married those guys, then she always made them stockings too. So when they came over, they got a stocking. Yeah. My mom always sewed our names onto our stockings, and I tried to do that when Jacob was little, and it's hysterical. You can't even tell that I was trying to make a word. But a food tradition that my mom always had was breakfast on Christmas. So we would be sitting at the table eyeing the gifts under the tree. Like, you can barely focus on eating, but you have to eat. But we always have a tradition of cinnamon rolls on Christmas, and oatmeal and, fruit, and just really kind of decadent kind of a breakfast. Hot chocolate, just feels really, really special, and setting the table and everything like that. So that's definitely a tradition I want to lean more and more into. And then our Christmas dinner, I know lots of families have various traditions on Christmas dinner. Our dinner has always been probably a little different than the norm. Because we don't like roast a turkey or, like have a big sit down dinner. What we do is, and my mom started this, I remember when I was pretty young, and it's brilliant just because of the way our family is and the size of our family. She would make like big pasta salad and crock pot ham, and she would have like crackers and cheese and all kinds of things like olives and pickles, and she would set it all up on the table, because what ended up happening was relatives would come and go for hours, and so then there was no like, well, we're eating at 6 or something. It was just, hey, you know what? See. Because my mom is also it's really important for her to keep the holidays from becoming stressful and full of obligation for people. So she always tells us like, oh, we're doing this, and you can come if you want, but you're not obliged, because she remembers, what it's like to have little kids, and everybody's like, now dress up and get here at 6 o'clock on Christmas. Like, what? We're trying to enjoy the holiday and relax as a family. And so she keeps it very low key. So, that's also something that has influenced me, is making sure that people know they're welcome to come, but there's no pressure. Anyways, so making sure that you get to enjoy your family in the way you like on a holiday, I think, is a big deal for us. So
you have big shoes to stand in. It sounds like your mum's still with us, isn't she?
Yes, she is, and she still, every holiday, she had, like, no matter where we lived in the world, because, Gary was in the Navy, so we traveled around, she would somehow put together the box of magic, be it Easter or whatever, and you open it, and, like, your whole childhood came rushing back at you, because she'd use the same bags, and she'd do the same sort of snacks and things like that, and you're just like, this, now I know it's really Christmas, because I have this,
Yeah.
So she did a really good job, and I definitely try to emulate that with the kids, and then also incorporate some of our own traditions. But I know that a lot of what I do is just colored by the fact that, like, those holidays in my mind are like unparalleled for their magic.
That's wonderful. That's such a gift that your mum
Yes.
has given you. It's just amazing.
And I want to remind everybody that she did all of this on a shoestring budget,
Yeah.
with a bunch of kids. Like
8 kids.
She would say that she's not a decorator, and she, with 8 kids in the house, there was nothing to decorate. Every shelf was packed with school books and things like that. But I think she totally is. She just doesn't even realize how good she is at it.
Wow. Really wonderful.
And
I don't come from a family that big, so I don't have... I don't have anything...
So just the fact that you and I are from different size families, let alone different countries, is going to influence our memories. So tell me about your Christmas.
I have one sister who's close in age to me, a little bit younger. And so we were just a family of 4 when I was growing up. And the traditional Christmas dinner in England now is turkey, and has been for quite some time. It wasn't always like that. I think in the past it was goose and other birds.
It was here too.
But it's turkey. So always, every Christmas, we would have a turkey at midday, or, as the meal in the middle of the day. And usually my grandparents would come over when I was a kid, and we'd have stockings. Now, I grew up singing in a church choir, and that was kind of my life. So I used to go to midnight mass on Christmas Eve, and that was the highlight of the year, really. The church was always packed, and all my friends were in the choir, and we were there when the church bells struck 12, and so it was Christmas Day, and it was all exciting because I was only 12, and I was up at midnight. And then Christmas Day I used to sing in the morning as well. So Christmas mornings for me were quite different. I'd spend some time with my family, but then I'd go off at 8:30 and sing in the church for the service for Christmas morning.
Is that a Catholic church?
No, it was the Church of England church. And
so
just around the corner.
That's Protestant then, right?
Yeah, that's right, Protestant. Okay. Yeah, that's right.
I guess I forgot. I should have added, Alison, that we always go to a candlelight service on Christmas Eve.
Okay.
And if Christmas falls on a Sunday, then we would go to church in the morning before presents. So, but
yeah, okay.
So similar, but carry on.
Yeah. So then for our family, we opened our presents. We had lunch, usually about 1:30, and that lunch would be 3 courses, which my mum would put on the table. And there was a Christmas pudding, which I don't know if you do Christmas puddings over there, which is like a suet pudding with loads and loads of dried fruit and nuts in. And then usually it's either brandy's poured over it and it's set light to and served with cream, or it's served with something called brandy butter, which is whipped up sugar, cream and brandy. And so you have this pudding hot from the oven or from the steamer, and then you put the brandy butter over it and it melts everywhere. Do you have Christmas pudding? No?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so that's just a UK
When
thing.
you say pudding over here, it's something different. Actually, our pudding comes from a Native American tradition, so we don't have. When you say pudding to us, we picture like a whipped sort of a mixture. And now we've come so far from what its parent was. Now we just have a sweet, creamy mixture.
Okay, now this is like a steamed pudding, like a treacle pudding or that kind of heavy
treacle? I'm not
steamed.
You're not defining it anymore for me.
We need some transatlantic education lessons, I think. Oh dear. Anyway, sometimes it would snow, but not very often. I do remember it snowing a few years when I was at school at Christmas. And then in our house, we always listen to the Queen's speech, which is always at 3:00 on BBC One on Christmas Day.
So the Queen
and my nan and
granddad,
my nan and granddad had to listen to it. And my sister and I were just like rolling our eyes generally. And then we would have the presents after that, all of us all together. And then generally the afternoon was playing cards. And then a buffet, so like what you were saying, similar to how your mum did it, with like a baked ham and vol au vents and sausage rolls and a Christmas cake that my mum always made. My mum made a rich fruitcake, which she put holes in and poured brandy into over, a period of about 6 weeks, and then she iced it just before Christmas.
It seems like there's a lot of brandy on Christmas.
Yeah, there is a lot of brandy.
Gotta get through all those relatives.
Yeah, so when I was younger, I was, as people who've listened to this podcast for a while know, I was rather overweight, and I used to love baking. So I used to make a chocolate log for Christmas and kind of things like that.
What's that?
Our Christmas is very, very different from that now. And I think as we go on, perhaps in the episode, you'll see that the way that I do Christmas here with Rob and Gabriel is very different to the Christmases I grew up in. But still, I have wonderful memories of, being together as a family.
Absolutely.
And Christmas being made to be very special for me and my sister, and wonderful memories of the choir and my friends and sharing Christmases with them. I thought I could talk a little bit about Christmas in Italy, seeing as it's my adopted home. And
let's hear it.
I think the most fabulous thing about Christmas in Italy for me is that the Italian sense of bella figura, so beauty, is just so wonderfully displayed at Christmas.
Oh, my word.
In that,
oh my word,
you have to, if you live near Florence, you have to go into Florence near Christmas, because the shop windows are the most amazing shop windows you've ever seen. Just so beautifully, so delicately and originally, creatively decorated. And the tree outside the Duomo is just gorgeous. Yeah, I want to. Last year we went to the street where Gabriel goes to school. Is a beautiful, beautiful street, and I got lots of inspiration for my own kind of decorations in the house from there last year. I wanted to take my camera this year, hopefully, and take some pictures. And
that would be so
I
wonderful.
think I'm not a winter and a Christmas fan really, because I get quite cold and I don't like the cold. I like the sun. But if I had to have Christmas in a normal sort of, European country that had extremes of, cold and warm, Italy is such a wonderful country to be in.
Yeah.
Around Christmas. I mean, it starts, as we were saying earlier on, with the autumn and the change of the seasons and the stuff that becomes available to buy. The chestnuts have just started, and the roasting chestnuts, the warmth and the smell and all the chestnut baking things, and the oil, the new olive oil, and then the greens start coming in, and the kale and the cabbages, and really what the Tuscan soil gives, and then persimmons and the citrus, the different citrus that are available, the pomegranates. It all kind of gives you this bounty that I don't remember experiencing in the UK. And then as you get closer to Christmas, it kind of gets wrapped up in this bow of just delightful, the way that the lights and the decorations are done. It's really, it makes it magical,
So interesting that you say that, Alison, because I feel like there's a couple threads of things you've said that I've seen kind of carry down to the end. You said you usually have a turkey versus a goose. You think they used to do a goose, and I thought that's modern marketing versus tradition right there, because it's easier to en masse raise turkeys, right? And turkeys are bigger and there's more meat. Geese are more expensive to raise. They take longer. And they are much smaller in terms of meat. So there we go, right there, one of our traditions being changed. And then you said it was the Church of England, and of course I thought, did she go to the Church of England because that's what she wanted, or did she go to the Church of England because King Henry VIII wanted to divorce his wife? Like, where did our tradition come from? And then I just loved it whenever you said that you listened to the Queen's speech. I didn't know that she did a speech on Christmas, but
she does.
Whenever we listened to about half of an episode of Downton Abbey last night, and it was an episode where they cut the wireless to listen to the King's first speech on the wireless, and the granny who grew up in the Victorian era, when he starts to speak, she stands, and I thought, that was just so respectful. And so when you said your grandma has to listen to the speech, then that made me think of her. But when you talked about the citruses and the olive oil and things like that, it just made me think and Charis and I were talking about this too. Charis is one of our patrons. Hi, Charis, if you're listening.
Hello.
And she and I were talking about traditional foods and making, I was telling her how it feels to me, and I was thinking about this the other day. It feels to me like the a lot of what we think of as traditions are like, oh, well, I don't know if I want to eat ancestral because I don't want to give up my Christmas traditions. And our traditions are actually modern kind of marketing versions of our true traditions, which would be a goose with a smaller portion of meat and more fat, and cinnamon buns without so much sweet, but more cardamom, more spices, you know, and soured bread, not yeast bread. You know what I mean? Like and the more Gary and I have gotten closer and closer to really just pulling from the area around us to provide our Christmas, which actually has largely come from budget restraints. You know, like, well, we can't go and order this traditional thing that we usually do or go to the store and buy this thing. So we either have to make our own or go out into the woods and find something, right? And the more that we have pulled either just branches for decoration or fruits from farms around us for the food, I feel like our Christmases have gotten richer and more colorful and more just magical. And
I'd completely go with that. I feel like since Rob and I and Gabriel have started making our own traditions and doing that not by spending more, by spending less.
That's the
our
funny
Christmases
thing.
have just been so beautiful, so memorable and so beautiful, and they don't pay much homage at all to many of the standard, and I'm air quoting now, traditions of a UK Christmas, but they're just amazing and so memorable, and hopefully for Gabriel so memorable. Perhaps I'll just slide into talking about how we do things differently then, now I'm talking about it.
That's a perfect segue.
So, for the first example, we don't have wrapping paper. We either leave things in the boxes that they came to our door in, or we wrap things up in old newspaper. Yeah. So and you know, when I first thought about doing it, I thought, oh, but it, you know, there's all the shiny stuff, but it's just, it feels so homely and such a nice thing to do, to not be generating all this extra waste. And I think, you know, from the outside, perhaps to my parents, it would look a little strange. But to us, it feels like the right thing to do. I think that, where do I start when I talk about our Christmases? So maybe I should start by saying for the last, I thought about this earlier on, 7 Christmases, it's just been me, Rob and Gabriel together, no one else, which is quite unusual considering Christmas is usually the time when families get together. So since we've been in Italy, we haven't been able to go back and be with family in the UK. And it's partially through not being able to, but it's partially because we live our life and the things we eat and the things that we do are different to what my family would do. And so it feels like, it has felt in the past like I've been on edge, or I've been bending myself in order to spend Christmas with my family. And it has become much more magical when I've been able to create a space within the family, it is 3 of us, to do something that all 3 of us find magical. You know?
Yes.
And I don't think it's always going to be like this. I don't think every Christmas in our future will be like that. I think we will have times when we're with other people, whether they be friends or family, in different ways. But it just so happens that the last 7 years it's been the 3 of us. So I think about 5 years ago, I had the crazy idea of on Christmas Day having some food always that we'd never had before, that we'd never eaten before, a new dish.
I love it.
I thought the organic turkeys and the organic geese were so expensive, and I thought, we don't need to have these, and Rob doesn't particularly even like them very much. So I thought, I want to be creative. Well, let's just, every year I'll find a dish that I've never made before and I'll make it, and we'll have that.
I think that's brilliant.
And it's become our thing for Christmas. Whether we'll keep it like that, I don't know. But last year we had, I fermented a whole cabbage head in, I think, the beginning of November. And then by the time December came, it was really soft. The leaves were really soft.
Yes.
And I rolled a pork mixture, which was with onions and some herbs and spices and I think bits of carrot.
Oh, that's very traditional,
I
like
rolled
Eastern European sort of a...
kind of, yeah, exactly, into these cabbage leaves, which had all been fermented, and then put sauerkraut in between them all, put a mixture of the sauerkraut juice and some stock on the top, and put it in the oven. It was absolutely delicious. I tried to remember what we had the year before, but I can't remember. Oh, it was.
I love
beautiful.
that the tradition is that it's something new. I think that's pretty fun because then you can spend 3 months thinking, what am I going to make?
That's where I am now. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any ideas about what you're going to do?
Well, yeah, I wanted it to be simple this year because Gable started a new school and we're, he's at school 5 days a week now, and Rob and I are both, doing our own thing, and we are finding we really are quite short on time. At the weekend, there's lots of things happening. Like this weekend, we're on Sunday going to a chestnut forest to pick chestnuts and then have some barbecue where we roast the chestnuts. And we'll be out all day Sunday. And things like that kind of keep popping up at weekends. And so rather than having to do a dish that requires me to ferment a ton of other things, I thought I want to keep it simple this year. I'm thinking of potentially doing something which is like sort of a pie with minced beef in the bottom, mixed in with some spices, warm spices, like a coriander, cumin.
Yum.
And I've been cooking minced beef like that recently, and Gable really loves it, with some cabbage in and some onions chopped up. And then I used to ferment sweet potato a while ago, and I loved the flavour of it. And I had a conversation on Instagram with the lady who is behind the profile I Am Cultured, who's a fermenter in Devon, and she was making the potato cheese from Nourishing Traditions.
Oh, yes.
And it reminded me of my fermented sweet potato that I used to do. And so I thought, I could ferment some sweet potato, perhaps with a bit of garlic in it, and then I could put the minced beef in the bottom of a casserole dish and then spread the top with that potato and then bake it. And that, I'm thinking maybe that might be our Christmas lunch.
Kind of like a really decadent cottage pie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yum.
Fermented, garlicky, sort of warm spices and sweet potato.
You won't be able to get up from the table.
I know. And then I want to have some beer, obviously. I'll do a new batch of beer with some different flavourings. And on Christmas Eve, there is one tradition that is very British that I like to engage in, which is in King's College in Cambridge. Every Christmas Eve, they do a carol service. It's called the Service of 9 Lessons and Carols.
I was just listening to King's College yesterday. Unbelievably amazing.
I love it because, I grew up singing in a church choir for 15 years, and sacred church music is my thing, and I love the tradition. So that's on... we don't watch it on the television. We listen to it on the radio. In fact, anyone could listen to it on the radio, no matter where you are, because you can get it on BBC Radio on Christmas Eve. I think it goes out earlier on the radio than it does on the television. And so we find a way to hook into that, and Rob puts it on the big speaker, so it's really good quality.
Oh, man.
And then we just sit together. That's like the end of work, the end of doing stuff. This is the beginning, signals the beginning of our relaxation. And I listened to it all the way through, and I think probably this year I will mull some of the swats, the oat ferment that I like to make so much. The drink is wonderful mulled, so I can imagine I'll be sitting there this year with some mulled swats to drink, listening to carols from King's, and thinking about what we'll have to eat. We usually have something special Christmas Eve. I don't know what that'll be yet. Christmas morning, we generally open some presents Christmas Eve, which is not something that is a UK tradition, but it's something that we just do ourselves. Rob and I don't really buy each other presents, but Gabriel is the focus, so he has a few presents Christmas Eve, and then probably I'm thinking pancakes Christmas morning.
Ooh, yes.
Maybe with some melted home roasted cacao liquor drizzled on them as a nice treat.
That'd be so good.
And then we just relax on Christmas Day. We listen to music from the radio.
Read.
Sometimes
we
what
always
plays.
Want to do is read.
We read. We play games. We dress up usually in the house. Bob puts on a nice shirt and I put a dress on, and we just and then we contact our families in the afternoon. So Gabriel has a video call with both his my mum and dad and Rob's mum, but we just relax. We watch Gabriel interact with the things that he's got for Christmas, and we read and we play games, and we will have some beer probably, and we'll have the nice food, and it's really magical, even though we don't spend a lot of money, and it's not grand, it's just the things that we like. The other thing, I was going to talk about my fermented gingerbread, because that's a new thing this year.
Not mention that.
Yeah, I thought, I've forgotten something. It's the fermented gingerbread. Last week I mixed up some honey and spelt flour, 50-50, and I've put it down to ferment in the coldest part of the house, and that's going to be for Christmas. So even though actually, as we record, it's only the third week in October, that's going to sit there for almost 2 months, and then I'm going to bring it up just before Christmas. Hopefully it'll still be in a state that's decent, and I'm going to mix up with Gabriel with ginger and some other whatever I think it needs to taste nice, and make gingerbread with it, with the flour that's been fermenting for 2 months, which is quite an exciting thing for this Christmas. That's something I've never done before, for sure.
It's gonna be awesome. Oh my goodness! I feel like the more you're talking, the more I'm remembering things that I'm like, oh yeah, we do this, we do that.
This is good.
There's so much to try and say that you do, but I feel like a lot of it really does center around what we eat. You know, there's these very traditional, specific flavors that we're all accustomed to seeing, like ginger and allspice and nutmeg and black pepper and things like that just make sense this time of year. And when we did our pumpkin spice class the other night, the one where I was telling you that I mentioned the Elly's sourdough and stuff like that. Whenever we did that pumpkin spice class, I was telling everybody, over here in the United States, there's this thing called pumpkin spice. I don't know if it's anywhere else in the world, honestly, but it's just the spices that you would normally see in a pumpkin pie. Okay. This cat is driving me crazy because he's attacking his own shadow and he won't go away. I'm trying to believe. Okay, there he goes. He just ran upstairs. Okay, so anyways, it's really, since pumpkin spice as the blend became popularized by a coffee chain over here that made it into a syrup, to flavor coffees. Now pumpkin spice as a sort of cultural phenomenon is really popular. And so then, of course, the obverse side of that coin is that it's really popular to say, oh, I hate pumpkin spice, it's so so I always tell people, well, if you say you love pumpkin spice and everyone gives you a hard time for it, just know that you're reaching back to your ancestral roots, because those are the spices and the smells, the aromas of the season that people surrounded themselves with and decorated with and cooked with and baked with and stuffed in their drawers and wore in sachets around their neck to try and keep themselves healthy. Because these spices actually have amazing health benefits. So cooking with these isn't just, ooh, it's cozy and so it's the time for nutmeg. No, it's cozy and it's the time for people to get the sniffles. So get your nutmeg out, get your cinnamon out, get your ginger out. These things they serve a purpose at this time of year.
So I'm thinking about my rice spice bread, which I cooked up on the first Zoom we did for our patrons. And how that is something that I associate with Christmas, and probably I'll make some for Rob and Gabriel. but that's got all those spices in as well. You know, it's got the cinnamon, it's got cloves, it's got ginger, it's got nutmeg, it's got, you know, that's a traditional kind of winter bread, just like the gingerbread that I'm going to do just before Christmas with those spices in is a traditional festive food. It has, like you're saying, it has a functional as well as a pleasurable side to it, for sure.
Yes, and it's also functional because in wintertime, a lot of your food might be spoiled by this time. So if you throw in a lot of spices, nobody will know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a very.
I wanted to talk about the other side of the world, because you just mentioned Elly and how you shared her sourdough recipe, and I touched base with her before we recorded because, of course, it's summer in Australia. Christmas Day is like midsummer rather than midwinter, like it is for both of us.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've never experienced a Christmas in midsummer. I've always experienced Christmas in the Northern Hemisphere. And it was really interesting to hear her say that, you know, she has pre-prepared salads and she makes things with brown rice and a lentil loaf and things that are cold, sauerkrauts and sauces and cooling desserts. And I thought how different it is and how different the traditions must be when it's midsummer where you are, you know, because you wouldn't need those spices and you wouldn't have the foods that were readily available, like Brussels sprouts, for example. Brussels sprouts are a stalwart on the UK Christmas dinner. You wouldn't have that kind of thing in Australia over Christmas. And I think that's absolutely fascinating to kind of let us know that, you know, really it's about following what's around you.
Yes.
Like the best farming is looking at what's around you and doing what you can with the land. Well, the best Christmas and the most traditional Christmas is looking at what's around you.
Yes.
And celebrating that, you know.
Yeah.
Really celebrating that.
Well, every holiday, really, when you really try to get into the traditions of them, they're almost always centered on the agricultural season and just absolutely the traditions were not shaped because peasants were, you know, hauling in stuff from Amazon.com or something. No, they were shaped because that was what they had around them. And the cathedral was hosting a giant mass and everybody went and listened to the choir. You know what I mean? This is the traditions came from exactly what you said, what was around you, which, you know, if somebody feels frustrated, maybe, I can't afford this special thing, or, you know, here in the United States, nobody can get anything shipped in for love or money. So, I can't get this thing shipped in or whatever. Turn to what is around you and your family and typically your church, you know, whatever it is that is around you, how can you use that to create the traditions?
So I think Elly's got a tradition that she's made herself, which is her sourdough fermented fruitcake. And I watched the video for it yesterday, and it looks really rich. And what I wanted to do was link to that in our show notes. So if anyone feels inspired to make a sourdough fruitcake,
I feel inspired.
As we know, Elly's recipes are so simple and so straightforward that I'm sure it would be a really easy one to follow, for sure.
So simple to put together, but complex in their simplicity. Like she makes it so easy because she understands it so well. You know what I mean? A friend of mine from New Zealand, I remember we asked him what his traditions were, and he said, we always have a barbecue on the beach. And he said, I don't know why as a kid, we never thought it was strange. We watched all the movies about, you know, Santa Claus and snow and people, you know, tramping around in their boots. And he's like, and it didn't really translate to us, but we just kind of like went with it and watched. So it was funny. And I asked on Instagram if anybody had any traditions that they would share. Jenna said that her family does an oyster roast or a bonfire, which I thought was awesome. How cool does that sound? Colleen said that they have really liked making wassail. Is it pronounced wassail?
Well, I saw that when you shared that with me, and it reminded me of wassailing, which I presume she was talking about the tradition of wassailing, which is that what she's talking about or not?
Well, she said that because you have a song that you've passed on to us, like "Here We Go a Wassailing" or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And so she was referring to the mulled wine. So mulling means to heat and to spice, typically wine. Although of course we do mulled ciders and things like that as well.
So she's calling that a wassail, the process of making a mulled wine.
Yeah. So we have then over here these recipes called like wassail, if that's how you say it. I actually don't know how to say it.
No, you do.
And that's just like a spiced wine, and they're really good.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating because I could be completely wrong here, but I'm not sure that wassailing was originally a spiced wine. I was listening to a podcast called How to Eat to Save the Planet, which was presented by Gilly Smith, and there's an episode in there on wassailing, and there's some people in the UK who are kind of doing the old tradition. The old tradition was to sing this wassailing song and go around the town.
Here it is.
With everyone.
And
then you would bless it. But I think it was ale. I thought it was an ale. In a big bowl, and they each drank it from this bowl. And when they drank it, they wished good things for their neighbour.
Okay. Yeah, no, you're right. It says just hitting the interwebs, and it's saying that it's from wassail, probably comes from the Old Norse wassail, and it's a beverage made from mulled cider and spices, typically drunk while wassailing, which was an English Yuletide drinking ritual and salutation. You would go around to everyone's door and kind of salute them, and it was to ensure a good apple harvest.
So you gave them apparently you had this drink in a cedar bowl, apparently, and then you offered it to them from the bowl, this kind of communal sharing of this
earliest versions warmed mead into which roasted crab apples were dropped. Okay, this sounds really good.
Because crab apples would be tart, wouldn't they? But roasted would bring out.
And our neighbor has a crab apple tree. So the earliest versions were warmed mead, into which roasted crab apples were dropped and burst to create a drink called lamb's wool, drunk on Lammas Day, still known in Shakespeare's time. Later evolved to be a mulled cider with sugar. Wow, I did not know people put sugar in it. Cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg.
It's been a wine now, so it's translated across the Atlantic into a wine, a spiced wine.
They topped it with toast as sops, and is drunk from a large communal bowl. Modern versions have a base of wine or fruit juice, mulled ale, sometimes brandy or sherry. Apples or oranges are mixed. Some people
want to make some.
Okay, looks like
I could make it with my beer, couldn't I? There we go.
Yes, you can.
I said I didn't know quite yet what I was doing this Christmas. I could make some of my beer, and I could spice it up.
This just happened right here on the air.
Try and find some. I haven't got any crab apples. I could try and find something like that. It's got that tartness.
Any small tart apple.
I could spice it up, and then we could drink it. That would be really cool.
Thank you, Colleen.
Okay.
Yes.
Our head's now going.
Yeah. Now Alison's off and running. Another FourLambs. I should click her to see what her real name is, but I took a screenshot of what she said. Apple cider, mulled wine, unflavored bone broth for hot chocolate. I was wondering if you could do mulled bone broth, like just a really neutral bone broth, and add a ton of spices and just cook it, so it's really spicy and simmery.
I don't see why not.
Wouldn't that be delicious?
I think I'd prefer to stick to my oat fermented liquid now. If I like it. What was the first one you said before you said the broth? What was the other thing she said?
Oh, mulled wine and apple cider.
Apple cider, yeah.
Apple cider is definitely very traditional out here where Colleen and I are, because we grow. I mean, virtually every yard has an apple tree in it. Gary's parents have apple trees in their yard. My parents have an apple tree in their yard. Our neighbors have apple trees. We have apple trees. I mean, apple trees are everywhere out here because they just grow really well out here. So apple, all the things.
Lovely. Sounds really nice.
Let's see.
I
also asked on Instagram. I just did like a poll on different things. So I was just asking people what Christmas traditions they liked. And so I asked if people like natural winter decor. Most people said yes. So we have natural winter decor. We always have, because that's what we can afford, because we go outside and pick it up.
Yeah.
And if we lived in town, I would just pick it up out of the yard, or I'd walk over when our neighbors were clipping hedges and ask if I could take branches. And then I got into this tradition. I don't know if it's a thing or not, but it was just what I had. There was a big broken branch in our yard that fell during a windstorm. And then I just started tying tons of other branches, both from hedges and trees, onto it. And then I hung strings down, and I started hanging like dried oranges and cranberries and just whatever I had, and made kind of like a mobile, I guess, and hung it over the kitchen window. And it was just a free thing based on what I had around me, but it became this like centerpiece. Everybody would come over and say, wow, that's so amazing. And I was like, well, it's just really, when you just think about what you can do without spending any money, you end up with something more beautiful and more unique than if you just went to like a store and bought a plastic kind of a decoration or something that would have been expensive and probably wasteful and harmful to the planet even. But this is just a beautiful thing, and eventually it just kind of went back into the wood stove or something. But so natural winter decor is really awesome. Like we, for Thanksgiving last year, Hannah went outside and she picked branches and ferns and sprigs of berries and things. And she filled like 10 quart or half-gallon mason jars with these really tall centerpieces and lined them all down the table.
And they smell so good.
Oh my word!
When you bring those furs in, when you do the orange slices, it just they smell so good.
And she and Jeremy made these, oh my gosh, they made the most beautiful wreaths. Like they would sit up there and weave branches, hundreds of branches, into these really tight wreath bases, and then they could put all the branches of the trees on top. Oh my goodness.
One day so awesome. I will learn how to do that. I remember seeing some on Instagram last year.
Yeah.
One day
I asked if people like fruit as decor. Everybody was kind of split on that. Some people like it, some people don't. A couple of my farmer friends said the same thing as me. If I put out fruit, my animals will eat it. So everybody's into the hot beverages at wintertime. Almost everybody. A lot of people like to do winter baking or Christmas baking. A lot of people like the sacred sounds of the season, like Handel's Messiah, and things came to my mind. Of course, I thought of King's Choir and Liberia and all those. There is a lot of Christmas music that I like, but a lot of modern pop Christmas music is not really my thing. But I like the choirs, like you said, and things like that.
Yeah.
And then most people said that they liked snow. I was surprised by that. I like snow, but I feel like most people say they don't like snow.
I like to look at snow, but that's about as far as it goes. I don't like anything else about it.
Well, I probably like it because it doesn't snow loads over here. Like we'll get a decent amount of snow in the winter, but it's not going to be snowed in for months on end. We'll be lucky if we have it for weeks on end. So it's always a little novel for us.
Yeah, last year we had it on the hills here. So we're surrounded by hills. And so it was really quite beautiful to look out of the window and see it settling on the hills. It didn't settle in where we are. But it made it, breathtaking, beautiful, really, to see it on the hills. So, I prefer to look at it rather than be in it. I wanted to make sure we talk about staying sane at Christmas, and maybe we can finish off with some tips and ideas and strategies, because I know that for a lot of people Christmas can be a very stressful time. Christmas can be a time that is not as positive as it is for everyone. And I wondered what your ideas on staying sane and keeping your cool and being festive, rather than getting stressed over Christmas are.
Yeah. Well, I will say first that I have a number of friends who have lost, children or loved ones. And I know that the holidays are very, very difficult if you have a deep loss like that. So if that is you, my friend, my heart is with you. And I'm definitely always keep those friends close to my heart, because it is, like you said, a time when you usually get close with family. And so it becomes even more distinct at that time. Not that their loss is ever without them, but that at that time they especially are reminded. So I think remembering that a tradition and a ritual is something that you can establish. I would definitely say if there's a loss, like, you have the right to not celebrate at all if that's what works for you. Also, if it feels like you do want to still honor the holiday in some way, then I would definitely encourage create elaborate rituals and things to remember that person. I know that can impact sanity a lot, the grief around that time of year. So just want to give my due respect to anybody going through that or living with that, for the rest of your life, living with that loss. For just the general mayhem that can set in, you're right. I think a lot of holidays can become very stressful and chaotic. And again, the farther back you look, there's probably always some degree of stress for the cook, whoever's preparing a traditional meal. But it's what you described it as a day of rest, right? And it's supposed to be, I don't know why I'm saying it's supposed to be, but throughout history, everybody, 95% plus of people have been farmers to some degree, just typically average. So your life was dictated by the season. And I would remind everybody that your farmer is still feeding the animals on Christmas. Your farmer is still, taking care of things, maybe even fixing things, on Christmas. That never stops. But for us, I told you my mom is just really good at creating ritual and tradition. And she built that up over years of, doing what worked and then adding on. Right. And so for me to try to compare myself today over what, the masterful art that she created over decades, would be crazy. So if you are looking on Instagram and getting overwhelmed and being like, oh, I can't do all the things, like, I did have one year where I went absolutely mad. And then I thought all of my kids are going to remember is me being stressed out, trying to, you better have fun and enjoy this, So, being able to, if your tradition is that you buy gingerbread cookies and you don't make them, go for it. I'm not going to stop you. Like, make the traditions be what works for you. Or if your tradition is that you always make gingerbread cookies and then you had triplets this year, then don't kill yourself over it, because the tradition should be getting to spend time with family. It is fun for me to go a little bit chaotic and have fun putting together gifts and things like that. And I laughed, Alison, when you said about the wrapping paper, because we don't buy wrapping paper either. A couple years ago, Gary was working on, he does all these woodworking projects in the garage. And so he gets these big rolls of brown paper that he lays down because the glue kind of falls on the paper and stain and things like that. and then we can just burn it, at the end of use it to start a fire or something. So I took his roll one year and used it to wrap presents, and it barely made a dent in the roll. And I thought, well, this is fantastic. I just do this every year. So yeah, newspaper or rolls of, it's like this gigantic roll of paper that'll probably last you for years, and it's $8. It's like, it's great. And we just use it for our fire starter once we've opened the presents. And when I'm going to reference Downton Abbey again, I'm sorry, people, but it's like the only show I've ever actually.
Do you know, I've never seen it.
That's okay. You lived it, Alison. You grew up. I'm just kidding. But there was just some scene where the butler and the housekeeper were wrapping a gift or something for Christmas, and they were just talking while they were holding the paper down and tying it with a string. And in that moment, I was like, wait a minute, that's why they wrap strings around presents, because we didn't have tape before.
Yeah.
Now we tape them and then we tie them. So then I started doing that too, just using rolls of string, and I could tie it up and not have to even get tape. But sometimes I think people look and they say, oh, look, you have these pretty like dried oranges and you have these evergreen boughs, and your presents look just right because they're in brown paper with this cool string, and they think that I like tried to put together a look or something.
Yeah, it just happened.
And yeah, I just need them to know, like, it's just trying to be cheap, It's just using what I had around me. It's just because I couldn't go to the store, or I don't know. I don't know how to say what I'm trying to say, which is that if you do what is natural and close and feels right, it comes together as your signature look, rather than trying to start with what I wanted my signature look to be. That would have been actually very stressful, but I just started with what I had around me, and it turned into what it is. And so that will shape your traditions.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't even know why it took me so long to say that.
I'm not sure that I've ever tried to create a signature look, or Rob and I just do what feels right to us. And I think it's quite important to say that it's important to do what you need to. If you need some time away from the kids, then get it. Don't go insane. If you need to say no to things, then say it. If you need to not cook this, then don't, because it's supposed to be about enjoying, resting, and being, doing things that you enjoy, being with friends, family, reading books, whatever it is that you like to do. It's important to make space for that. And with the food, particularly with big families, I don't have this because I'm only cooking for one day. But I can imagine it's easy to get very overwhelmed, particularly if you have different diets coming to be with you, or people who are very particular about their food. So from that perspective, pre-making stuff is a great idea. And another tip that Elly said was ask people to bring things. If you've got people who are eating different stuff, if I was invited somewhere, I'd be more than happy to bring something. So ask for help when you need it, and take deep breaths. Pre-make as much as you can. Don't worry about what it looks like. Worry about enjoying yourself and being with people, and making it memorable from that perspective, because those are the things that we remember. The moments when we're laughing, the moments when we're hugging, the moments when we're sitting together and playing games, the moments when we're sitting with a quiet cup of tea looking out the window. Those are the things that we remember, not that rush to get everything onto the table. And so those are the moments to really hold close and try to ensure that they happen by letting the other stuff be less important.
Yep. I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And I love what Elly said about asking people to bring things, because there's two things that happen when you ask someone to bring things. One, we need to be able to ask for help. We need to be able to accept help from our community. And two, people need to feel that their presence is valuable and that they're contributing to the household. And that's something I say, I've noticed it's something that I say to my kids all the time when we're doing something or doing a chore, or we're trying to get the house ready to go or something. And I'll say to them, what are you doing right now to contribute to the household? Because maybe it's playing with the baby, maybe it's cleaning, but I want them thinking in that direction of what am I doing to contribute? And my mom always said that it's great to ask people to bring things when they come to an event or something, because they feel like such an included part of the picture at that point.
If
Which
you
I love
invite
that
me
even-
to your house,
Yes.
ask me to make something and I'll bring some
Oh,
bread.
yes.
And I will love bringing some bread.
Yes,
because
please.
I love
You're
sharing
invited.
it, so yeah.
Yeah.
That. Or maybe I'll bring some beer.
Oh, yes. That's Alison's hot tip for getting through the holidays. Make some beer.
Yeah.
Lots of it.
Oh, no.
No, but I love that my mom even thinks in terms of, when she's asking people to bring things, how is it, on a psychological level, what is it making them feel?
It does. It makes a huge difference. And it's a way to build a connection, even with people that you don't know particularly very well. The conversations that start and the nice feeling that comes through exchanging and sharing together, just like that wassailing tradition, of taking the ale in one bowl and everyone drinking out of the same bowl. It's the same idea of community, inclusiveness, and
maybe we'll be
and
doing that
sharing
out
our
here.
humanity.
We have people, couple groups actually are camping out here this weekend.
Oh, okay.
And I was telling Gary, do you think we'll have people camp out here over Christmas? Because how cool would that be? And it makes you want to take a big pot and go around, knock on all their doors.
Yeah. It's a lovely idea.
Oh man. Just to go around and wish your neighbors good cheer and a blessing on their year and on their produce and their harvest. It just feels right.
Yeah, I agree. Cheers to that. Okay, well, I think we've knocked Christmas on the head. What do you think?
I think we barely scratched the surface, Alison. I would love it if anybody has Christmas traditions or holiday traditions. I know we have so many of you that celebrate Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights. There's all kinds of different holidays in the winter represented. Just within the people that we know, Alison, you and I. That's crazy. And I would love to hear if you could tag us on
Please
Instagram.
do.
I just want to see, because just hearing people's comments about their traditions was, I don't know, it sparks something in me. It makes me want to, adopt their traditions or adapt my traditions with theirs. And just, I don't know. I love hearing about it. I can never hear enough about
Broadens
Christmas
the
traditions.
mind, I think.
Yes.
Broadens the mind. Helps you think differently. Well,
so tag us on there. We want to see it.
Yeah, please do. Definitely.
All right.
Cool.
Well, thank you, Alison. I'm ready to go. We actually have a little holiday party here tomorrow, so I'm doing a little bit of baking for that. So I'm really excited. Now I'm really in the mood for it. I'm going to turn on some King's Choir.
Oh yeah, in the background.
Yes.
Nice. Oh, happy baking.
Oh, thank you. All right. Well, I'll talk to you soon, Alison.
Yeah, talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. We'd love to continue the conversation. Come find us on Instagram. Andrea's at Farm and Hearth and Alison's at ancestral_kitchen. Until next time, we both wish you much fun, exploration, and satisfaction in and out of the kitchen.